So on his side, and you may recognize some names, Chad Kastel, Robert Vaughan, and Patrick Sullivan. They are on the left. They're a team of some real old school players here from the New Jersey area.
Pat rocking the Denver shirt here. It's currently where he calls home.
So that means he's not a Clippers fan anymore. So he moves to Denver, and now he's a Nuggets fan?
Yeah, who can say?
Wow, wow. Where's the loyalty there? Their opponents will be Nathan Fox, Corey Sarsfield, and for this match, Jonathan Coveney. And Ryan, I just got to think, with these two archetypes, like, what year is it right now?
The calendar will tell you 2017. But
Burn versus Merfolk?
This looks like it would be about 2006.
All right, it's basic lands on both sides. Island into Ether Vial for Coveney. Right, so one of the strengths I think that Burn still has some staying power in Legacy is Price of Progress. But there's an issue with the Merfolk deck.
Yeah, so Patrick has a ton of basic lands, but Coveney actually has 12 basic islands in his deck as well. The only non-basics being 4 Cavern of Souls and 4 Mutavaults. It's going to be difficult for Patrick to convert these Price of Progresses.
Patrick is going to try for Goblin Guide. Coveney trying to decide if he wants to daze it. I would think he'd snap that one off here.
Yeah, there's not a lot of spells that Patrick's going to be casting that are very dazeable. The Goblin Guide generates kind of a lot of damage very quickly. This weekend, Patrick is not playing any Searing Blazes in his main deck. Coveney doesn't necessarily know that.
And it will get dazed. Goblin Guide into the bin. Patrick passes. And you know, I talked about how Patrick's deck is 20 basic mountains and 10 4-ofs. Coveney's deck's not very far off that. He's got 9 4-ofs, 12 islands, 4 Cavern, 4 Mutavault.
And you saw the pickup for Coveney there. This is something that's going to be very relevant in this matchup.
Oh, wow. Is that main deck Chalice?
Yeah, 4 main deck Chalice of the Void.
Oh, goodness. Ugh. So the number against Burn would be 1, right? On 2 mana, you set that Chalice to 1.
Yes, and there are spells that Patrick can cast through this. Looks like only 21 drops in the deck. It is quite a lot.
Well, Patrick's going to go for Eidolon of the Great Revel here. This is one of his other 4-ofs. You see there's 2 Force of Wills in Coveney's hand, so he actually could go for the plan of counter slam Chalice.
This is another thing where things line up pretty well for Coveney. You see he has Ether Vial active here, so he doesn't have to necessarily cast any creature spells here, though the Eidolon does represent a lot of damage.
And both Force of Wills will be used to counter Eidolon, so Patrick Sullivan's tried for 2 spells, and Coveney's countered them both, and now with Cavern, I think we see Master of the Pearl Trident and 2 Chalices. He's going to slam one of these.
Oh yeah, get that Chalice on the table, turn off a lot of what Patrick's up to here.
And now once there's a Chalice on 1 and a Chalice on 2 in play for Jonathan, Patrick's locked out, right? I guess he could hard cast a Rift Bolt.
He can Rift Bolt and he can Fire Blast.
Right, that's a 6. Chalice of the Void main deck on 1 for Coveney. This is a disaster for Patrick's deck. He's done 1 damage.
Yeah, and you see there is at least 1 Price of Progress in Sullivan's holdings here. Currently would deal 2 damage. Oh, I love this out of Sullivan here.
Okay, Patrick knows how dead he is here. One thing he's going to do is he's just going to start playing 1-drops. Now, Coveney has to say, counter your spell. And he does. Okay, Patrick puts it.
If you don't check him on their Chalice, you're just losing that equity. There is a chance that they just cast a Chalice, they feel really good, and it just gets countered. And here comes Eidolon of the Great Revel coming down for Sullivan here. And Coveney is going to Vial in his Master of the Pearl Trident. So 2-2s on both sides of the battlefield here. So go back to Coveney's turn.
All right, so Patrick does have something on the battlefield. He got an Eidolon down, but you're right, like Jonathan's not really going to cast anything. This is tough stuff for Sullivan. Chain Lightning in hand.
It is worth noting that Coveney is pretty light on resources at this point in time. He did cast a Force of Will. That is inherently card disadvantage. So he's going a little bit down in resources there. I believe the only other creature in his hand is a Phantasmal Image. So in theory, he can go up to 6 power on his side of the battlefield here.
Phantasmal Image is the play off the Ether Vial, which means he doesn't actually take damage off the Eidolon.
And so this actually opens up a little bit of Sullivan's hand here. He does have a Chain Lightning that will be countered by Chalice of the Void, but he can still target Phantasmal Image.
So Patrick targets Image with a 1-mana spell. The 1-mana spell doesn't resolve, but the Image actually still dies thanks to that ability of when it becomes a target, sacrifices it.
Exactly. Patrick will have to take 2 damage for his trouble given his Eidolon of the Great Revel, but it cleans up a little bit of what's going on the other side of the table here. And we see another basic mountain in Patrick's hand, and still that Price of Progress. So it's going to be tough for him to deal too much damage, but he can't do anything but be aggressive with his deck. All his spells do, the majority of his deck just goes upstairs. You see 4 Flame Rift in his main deck. The only plan that he has to win this game is to just be as aggressive as possible.
He's going to make that play. Chain Lightning, so he takes 2 off his own Eidolon. Phantasmal Image will still die. And hits across. So 17, he's gotten Jonathan down. That's the first damage he's actually gotten across.
Best case scenario for Sullivan is Coveney just peels Running Cavern of Souls off the top of his library and actually just plays them, yeah, for no real consequence.
Well, no, he'd have to. Well, the problem is if he plays 2 of them, then Coveney will cast Chalice on 2. He has another Chalice in his hand.
But that would be bad news.
So he needs him to peel 1
we can
and not another.
We can respond to the Chalice on 2 with the price and sneak in for some damage. Currently, the price of progress.
That Flame Rift is really rough.
Currently, the price of progress actually deals 2 damage to both players because of the Eidolon.
Oh yeah, yep.
And as you see with the life totals, he is behind in the race.
Yeah, it's great. Patrick Sullivan down to 13, draws another mountain.
Getting close to hardcast Fire Blast territory, which is never where you want to be.
You can save some of your mountains. Yeah, that's really no good. If on Jonathan's side, that's what he's playing around, though. If Patrick's hand is full of Fire Blasts, perhaps. Another Master of the Pearl Trident to the draw. Coveney's hand, just 2 more copies of Chalice of the Void and the Merfolk. Remember, he has 4 Chalices in the main. Now remember, we are going to get as much of these 3 matches as possible. Looking across the board, we actually have some really neat matchups here. Jonathan's teammates, Corey Sarsfield on Abzan counters. That's the Hardened Scales version of Abzan with Walking Ballista in Modern. In Standard, they're playing Grixis Improvise as well, a card kind of using something like Metallic Rebuke to great effect.
That card is very powerful.
More lands for Patrick Sullivan. He's behind in the damage race. And this is going to put the clock to a real fast point. Another Master on end step with the Ether Vial.
Yeah, this officially puts Sullivan on a two-turn clock here with 6 power on the table versus his 11 life.
Yeah, Phantasmal Image the draw for Jonathan could make it even less.
Not enough to change the clock, but it does force Sullivan to have more things to disrupt it in any way.
Yeah, so Vials that in, and Patrick will go ahead and scoop that one up. Game 1, first game of the round here, goes over to Coveney and his team.
That's about how I expected game 1 to go here. Things get a little bit better for Sullivan in the sideboard.
Yeah, so you're in Patrick Sullivan's seat, and you're playing Burn against Merfolk, which could be an okay matchup were not for these 4 copies of main deck Chalice of the Void. So let's look first at some of the sideboards with Patrick Sullivan. He's going to have to answer that card, right?
Well, the problem isn't just Coveney's deck. He had a lot of air in his deck with these Price of Progresses, with these Flame Rifts. You don't really love these cards in this kind of matchup.
Right.
So he's going to be converting into these Searing Bloods, which are great. They let him both remove creatures and deal damage at the same time. Searing Blaze for much the same effect. There's a strong argument for Smash to Smithereens because there's both Chalice of the Void and Ether Vial out of the Merfolk deck. So
should be fine to hit either of those.
Right, all these cards seem great here. Exquisite Firecraft is an uncounterable burn spell, and some of your concern is with your Fire Blast, say, being countered. I could see this one coming in as well.
So now, Ryan, I'm looking here, only 2 Searing Blaze in Patrick's sideboard. Now, normally this is a card I see in the main deck of Legacy Burn.
Yes, the issue this weekend is Patrick, just 20 basic mountains, no fetch lands. That really makes the Searing Blaze a lot less effective. You have to make your land drop main phase instead of leaving up a fetch land to do it whenever you want to trigger the landfall. So it's a little bit worse than Searing Blood in his deck, so that's why you see the 4-2 split there. Yeah,
and so he's gone in the main deck for its Flame Rift in the spot where you'd normally see Searing Blaze, I think?
Yeah.
Okay. But now that he does have those, it's kind of like Modern Burn where you see against a creature deck where they board into all these 2-mana spells that kind of kill creatures with a Punisher effect on top of them.
Yeah, he's going to be taking a role that's kind of a hybrid between being the aggressor and the control, where he's both killing creatures and dealing damage simultaneously.
Yeah, so a lot of sideboard then for Sullivan. Searing Blood, Searing Blaze, Smash, Firecraft. We could see him sideboard up to 12 cards in his deck.
Yep.
Now, on Jonathan Coveney's side, frequently out of a blue deck, they look toward a counterspell war against Burn. Every time a card trades, it's pretty good. Burn's a combo deck in a way that if they resolve 7 cards, they win. So we have look through this. What do we like then?
So there's very little that actually I expect to come in here. The only card I'm really looking at is Spell Pierce to try to counter spells. I can tell you right now, Coveney should definitely leave these Dismembers on the sideboard. I think that one's not going to be too effective here. Things like Null Rod, Torman's Crypt, Mimiki Gusari, those don't really do anything. And I think that Echoing Truth is just some inherent card disadvantage that doesn't necessarily matter. Submerge, you don't want to cast that one for 5. Graph Digger's Cage doesn't do anything. Really just looking at Spell Pierce.
Yes, Spell Pierce, that's something though, if I've watched Patrick enough, seen him commentate enough burn matches to know that he is going to have Spell Pierce on his radar, saying one of the biggest flaws of playing Legacy Burn is you cannot get your spells Spell Pierced.
Yep. Yeah, just trading your spell for 1 mana
is
from your
really
opponent.
Bad news.
Yes.
All right, well, we are going to be broadcasting all weekend over now on twitch.tv, so come and join us in the feature match area with our Twitch subscription program. A lot of benefits here for surviving. You get a custom emoticons badge, only $5 a month. Also, we have our You Decide the quarterfinals. That's going to be the semifinals this weekend. It means that as we get to our elimination rounds, there's interaction between us and the viewers as to what players and what decks you want to see. We, of course, are broadcasting on twitch.tv/SCG Tour.
Expect to see a pretty stacked top 4 this weekend as the team events. The cream generally rises to the top.
That's one of the things that I think really can't be understated. When you see these team events, it's going to be the best teams up at the top. Because just how it works out, so maybe a pro wins. Usually the top pros we see on the SCG Tour, they are winning about 65%, 2/3 of their matches. Mm-hmm. So if a player wins 2/3 of, just some basic math here. If I win 2/3 of my match, if a player pro wins 2/3 of his matches during an event, he stands a reasonable chance of reaching the top 8. But then let's say you get a team of 3 pros, and all 3 of them win 2/3 of their matches. It's so much harder now to beat their team because if you're on the other side and you have a 1/3 chance to beat them normally, but if you need to do that twice in 3 times, now suddenly the pro team is like 85% or somewhere around that to win, and it becomes way harder.
If you have 3 players winning 2/3 of their matches, and every round they need to win 2 out of 3 matches,
right,
they'll win 100% of their rounds.
That is not how that works.
Oh.
But they still win. It still becomes the number gets bigger. I don't. You don't just get to add those. Right. It's.
Hey, double check my math. It makes sense to me.
For independent probabilistic events, Ryan, we multiply them. We don't add them.
I know some of those words.
All right, over in Standard, Robert Vaughan, Patrick's teammate, he evens it up. The 4-color Marvel deck that he's brought to the table takes game 1 over Grixis Improvise. And that's one that we could get to if we can. It's kind of interesting because one of the things that's actually been good against Marvel in the past has been counter spells.
Yeah, in particular, being able to counter Aetherworks Marvel can generally slow them down, especially now that Emrakul, the Promised End, has been banned in Standard. Counters are a lot more effective. These decks generally have more Ulamogs and just uncastable spells in their deck. The Grixis Improvise deck isn't terribly heavy on disruption, but it has enough stuff where you can. I assume this is going to get better post-sideboard for them.
Yeah, the 4-color Marvel deck that Vaughan is playing this weekend. We'll get to that later. We're going to get to game number 2 here of the Legacy matchup. Patrick Sullivan now on the play. Starts with Goblin Guide. Can't daze it this time.
Nope, I believe Coveney picked up an island off of the trigger there.
Right here now, we got some mismatched islands going on. Some old card frame, some new card frame.
Keep them guessing.
I'm a big fan of that. He starts on the basic land of his own and has to discard to hand size.
This is a really good sign for Sullivan here.
No Ether Vial?
No Ether Vial, not even a Curse Catcher.
All right, so you're going to try to even it up. Goblin Guide swings again. I like how it attacks the top card of the library there. We see Lord of Atlantis, who's going to be Jonathan's next draw.
Yeah, Sullivan's going to remember all of those triggers. Definitely beneficial for Coveney, but Sullivan does get some information off of this. He knows that Lord of Atlantis is coming off of the top.
And mission accomplished already here for Goblin Guide. It's dealt 4 damage for 1 mana. That's already a great burn spell.
Yes. And Sullivan, he does have a Searing Blood in his hand.
All right.
So he'll be able to manage this kind of slow start for Coveney.
Yeah, if Coveney just plays Island and that Lord of Atlantis that they know about, it's going to be a big win for Patrick.
Yep. He has to be concerned about something like Daze or Force of Will.
Sure. Mutavault to play for Jonathan, and he'll play Chalice of the Void on 1. Patrick, see, there's a lightning bolt in his hand. He will send that one upstairs with the Chalice on the stack.
A Chalice on 1 on the draw. Bit slow, as you see the Goblin Guide's already done its job.
Well, the Goblin Guide's looking to get in for its 6th point of damage. That's pretty huge. And you see Patrick now drawing, I believe his hand has 3 copies of Exquisite Firecraft in it. I mean, talk about not caring about Chalice right now.
Right, 3 Firecrafts and a Searing Blood. His hand looks to be uncounterably lethal. So given enough time, Patrick should be able to win this game. He casts the Searing Blood. It gets countered or it doesn't. This turn, the Goblin Guide connects, puts Coveney down to 11. Then over the course of 3 turns, he just has to not die and just throw these Firecrafts once he is a Spell Master with his Searing Blood in his graveyard.
Patrick right now consulting with teammate Chad Kastel. Chad actually took a game 1 as well in that Obzon mirror, I guess I would say, over in the Modern section. Goblin Guide going to try to get its 6th point of damage in. That's going to work. It shows True Name Nemesis. Now, Ryan, that's a card. Well, I was going to say I expected him to board it out. And we talked about it doesn't have much of a sideboard. It certainly is not one of his good cards here.
It'll block the Goblin Guide. It can't be it can't be Searing Blooded, which is significant.
Okay, you're right. I mean, on the draw here, like a 3 drop just seems like no.
It's slow. It's certainly slow. The fact that it can't be tagged by a removal spell is significant, but you're right, 3 mana is a lot. It's not as much of a liability as 3 mana is against a true combo deck, something like Storm.
And I just want to point out some heads-up stuff. Patrick not playing a land there because of the fact that he could draw Searing Blaze.
Yep.
For Coveney, he plays True Name Nemesis. See, on Patrick's spot, I would be tempted to have played the land and cast Exquisite Firecraft. Shows why I'm not playing the deck. And I think that's what he was might have been consulting with his teammate about is, how much time do I have here? The conclusion was a lot.
Yeah, he really wants to turn Spell Mastery on and make sure that these are all uncounterable.
Patrick passes the turn again. We go back to Coveney, plays a 4th land. It's a 2nd Mutavault. Patrick does have to be careful here, right? Merfolk can dish out a ton of damage in a really short window.
Yeah, now he does have to be a little bit more concerned about being clocked here. There is the active True Name Nemesis. Any Master of the Pearl Trident or Lord of Atlantis would turn these Mutavaults into 3/3s, and of course the True Name Nemesis into a 4/2. All
right, and now Jonathan, he has made the mistake of playing a creature. Patrick's hand was Searing Blood and multiple Exquisite Firecrafts. And right now, I think what Patrick wanted to do was Searing Blood, get that 2nd spell in the yard, and then start dishing out Firecrafts.
Yep.
If Jonathan had played nothing here, right, then Patrick's in a really odd situation where he just can't convert anything. But now it's just, let's go. This is right all online. So with the draw trigger on the stack, Patrick's going to attempt to Searing Blood the Silvergull Adept.
And with the Searing Blood resolving, that means it's just two turns of Exquisite Firecraft for Sullivan here.
Yep, Jonathan goes to 8. Patrick's hand is Mountain, Exquisite Firecraft with Spell Mastery online. When there's 2 spells in the graveyard, Exquisite Firecraft is a 4 damage burn spell that is uncounterable. There's no life gain in Merfolk. There's no way to counter these spells. Jonathan is dead in 2 turns.
And he has turned up the heat a little bit. He says Phantasmal Image copying his True Name Nemesis. That's great. He can attack for a lot, but he needs lethal this turn.
Yep, here's 1 Firecraft. Jonathan's at 4. Patrick has another, so Jonathan needs to deal 17 here. It's probably not, let's see, so he has 6 damage on the board. I guess 10 if you count the Mutavault, so it's great, but it's not 17.
Right. He doesn't have anything like an Ether Vial. He can't produce multiple Lords this turn. Yeah,
I think we're going to head toward a game 3. You see Jonathan sitting there on 3 Force of Wills and a Spell Pierce. How good is Exquisite Firecraft looking?
Yeah, I think his window in this game was to Force of Will that Searing Blood.
I mean, I understand on Jonathan's side, you don't necessarily expect your burn opponents just to dish out 8 points of uncounterable damage.
I get it. I get it. I'm just saying, I think that was the only line that he had.
Here's Lord of Atlantis. Activates a Mutavault. So 3/3. It's going to be, looks like 11 damage. Patrick will chump block some. Regardless of how much damage is, it's not 17. Patrick, draw, Firecraft, game 3.
Any misdirections?
That would do it.
And we're going to game 3.
Some education there on Jonathan's side. I think he was he was thinking that his counterspell wall was a little better fortified than it actually was. Right? He had Chalice on one, he had Force of Will plus Spell Pierce. It felt like a pretty great spot until he saw the grip of Firecraft.
We made the joke about what year it must be to see this matchup at the beginning of the round. Exquisite Firecraft has really changed the way that Burn plays against these blue decks in Legacy.
Yeah, Miracles is actually now a good matchup for Burn because of Exquisite Firecraft.
Yep, I know that Joe Lissette actually brings in Relica Progenitus and like Graveyard Hate to try to turn off Spell Mastery.
Oh, Afterboard and Relic against Burn? No, I mean, yes, it's probably correct, but I don't like it.
I prefer it to losing.
Yep, and that's why I see the point. So they even up at 1 apiece. That means 1 game apiece for all 3 members on the left side here. That's Vaughan, Kastel, and Sullivan. The Legacy players, they look to be headed to decide in Game 3.
Merfolk v. Burn, not where I would have guessed that we were starting.
No, I mean, let's look at this. The Patrick's Force to Game 3 is a pretty big deal here. Jonathan Coveney has had Chalice of the Void on 1 on turn 2 of all these games.
And with him back on the play in Game 3, that Chalice on 1 looking to be more significant.
So over at StarCityGames.com, we, of course, have our weekly sale. That's deals on different things at our store, changing every week. This week, it was Valentine's Day, so we ran our Valentine's Day special, and no better way to celebrate the holidays than when you and your loved one can play some Nissa versus Ob Nixilis.
It's a 2-player endeavor. You see there some cards Defense of the Heart.
Oh, that's adorable.
Cathartic Reunion.
I don't get Lightning Bolt.
It's red.
You could use that. I get the other 2. Okay, people hugging, yes. Defense of the Heart, yes. But you could do that to any red card.
I heart Lightning Bolt.
I thought, is there a sale? I hope there's like a sale on like Rotten Heart Ghouls. Stuff like that. But head on over. We have that sale running all the way through this week. So you can get those all weekend. And check in Monday morning as we go to our next weekly sale over at StarCityGames.com.
Patrick Sullivan hearts Lightning Bolt.
No, I get that people like Lightning Bolt. That wasn't the problem. But you could just say that about any red card. Not all red cards are Valentine's Day cards.
Yeah, that's just like your opinion, man.
Our Some conferring with teammates over here. You see up at the top in Standard, Nathan Fox wins Game 2. So he and Robert Vaughan are going to go to a 3rd game as well. Grixis Improvise takes one.
Yeah, for the improvised deck, looks like there's some negates in the sideboard that certainly come into play against these combo decks. So that's going to make him better against Vaughn's combo Aetherworks Marvo deck.
Yeah, the Vaughn's deck, I just want to talk a little bit about this. This is an all-in on Ulamog deck. 4 copies now. Main deck, it's a real nice one. It's got main deck Fumigate, main deck Nissa's Renewal.
Love it.
Pretty into that. 1 Dynavolt Tower, 1 Traverse.
So spice.
I've been informed that Rotten Heart Ghoul is not on sale for the Valentine's Day special.
I would consider that an injustice.
It's normal price of 5 cents or whatever it is. Will have to stay.
That's a real bummer.
A good 2/4 for 4 when it dies. I think 15 cents. Yeah, it's still 2/4 zombie for 4. When it dies, your opponent discards a card.
Too rich for my blood. We see Sullivan hemming and hawing about his hand here. In this kind of matchup, Sullivan's probably really heavily scrutinizing any hand that does not have Searing Blood or Blaze.
Well, I mean, how much does he have to... Say he has a hand that loses to Chalice on 1, you know? Can he keep him?
That's also a problem.
Land go for Coveney. There's going to be a Chalice on 1 on turn 2 again. Patrick, turn 1, Lava Spike, go. Boom, 17.
Giving a lot of respect to Chalice on 1 with that play.
I better dump out one of these 1-drops before he chalices me. How about Lava Spike? Mutavault the drop for Coveney. When you play Legacy Burn, are you required to put it in red sleeves? Is that just like a requirement of the deck?
Yeah, I think if you check the IPG, there's a penalty for not doing so.
There's the Chalice for Coveney. Patrick? Flame Rift. Yeah, Jonathan's going to have to read that one. It's simple. Both players take 4. Yep. 13 and 16 are life totals.
They don't make them like this anymore.
We could play Boros Charm, but you need white mana for that. Let's do Flame Rift instead.
Who wants to register planes?
And Jonathan, he looks like he may have been banking on this Chalice. His only play there is to attack with Mutavault and play a land.
Worth noting that Sullivan no longer has to be concerned about Spell Pierce with this active Chalice on 1.
Good point. You see Patrick, no more lands here. He's got 2 copies of Fire Blast. The first copy of Fire Blast is like the best card in Burn. The second copy can be kind of awkward. But how about another Flame Rift? The race is kind of close.
Looks like Sullivan's taking 6 damage a turn and Coveney taking approximately 4.
It's okay, he'll Fire Blast when it matters. And Jonathan's gonna daze it. That's pretty big. Patrick, no land.
Getting that daze out of the hands, pretty nice. Sullivan does have a Searing Blood in his holdings.
Mutavault hits Patrick down to 12 and Jonathan takes the lead. Exquisite Firecraft Patrick's draw. That doesn't play. He'll just have to pass. True Name Nemesis, the draw here for Jonathan. Interesting, if he goes for the Mutavault hit, he could get punished. True Name's a fairly safe play, though. He's going to go for the big play, though. Here's Master of the Pearl Trident. Activate Mutavault, swing. Patrick will Searing Blood the Master.
Takes this line over the True Name Nemesis because he's using all of his mana. Definitely like that. And I believe he has a Force of Will if he wanted to fight over this.
But he doesn't. Jonathan goes to 10. Patrick goes to 10. The way to play around that for Jonathan would have been just to make True Name Nemesis, right? There's not actually, and I think that might be the heads-up play. There's not actually too many end-step, like the 2-mana burn spells in Patrick's deck, by and large require a creature. And Patrick checks him on the Chalice. Jonathan says, no, there's still a Chalice in play. Patrick does suspend a Rift Bolt, and that will sneak around Chalice of the Void.
Always got to check him on that Chalice.
It's pretty free.
Yeah, the spell's not doing anything if you're not casting it.
Another land by Patrick and a go. If he draws a 4th land, he has 2 copies of Fire Blast. That is very strong here.
He has Fire Blast, Exquisite Firecraft. So if he assumes that he's able to resolve Fire Blast or just picks up another mountain for his turn, he could very well have lethal on this following turn.
Rift Bolt, where's it going? Patrick's at 7, Jonathan at 10. Big question. Upstairs or it's upstairs, 7. Yeah, Patrick draws on a Lightning Bolt. That's not going to work just yet. Yeah, 2 Fire Blast and Exquisite Firecraft. That's right, he can just go for a win here. Floats 2 mana, plays Fire Blast.
And here's the Force of Will.
All right. And that may have been the...
I actually really like that Patrick went for it on this turn, because if you look at the board, there's Lord of Atlantis and Mutavault. That's currently 5 power with Sullivan at 7. Another Lord makes that lethal. So even if Coveney does have Force of Will, there's a chance that he has to pitch a Lord of Atlantis or a Master of the Pearl Trident to actually resolve that spell. So Sullivan could be saving himself a turn to top deck that mountain and go for Fire Blast again on the following turn.
Yeah, so he's going to play this Exquisite Firecraft, and he's got to decide where he wants it to go. It's going to go upstairs. Jonathan's at 2. There's 5 damage on the board for Coveney, and Patrick is hoping that Jonathan doesn't kill him and then that he draws a mountain.
Yep.
A draw. But here's some bad news for Patrick Sullivan fans. While Jonathan swings for 5 and makes it 2-2, Jonathan picked up another Force of Will that turn.
Yep, and Coveney safely on 2 life.
Rift Bolt by Patrick. He'll try to Lightning Bolt for the win. Jonathan sees it. Game and match to Jonathan Coveney and Merfolk.
I assume that most of Sullivan's matches this weekend are going to be approximately that close. That's just what happens.
You gotta love how he plays that last turn. He's dead and he says, I gotta just confidently Lightning Bolt for the win here. And then Jonathan says, no. He's like, you got it.
Yep. And Coveney did not miss a single Chalice trigger.
No, he didn't.
And we're gonna go to one of these other matchups here.
All right, so we're gonna bring you back to the booth here. So right now the score is 1-0 in favor of the team of Fox, Sarsfield, and Coveney. We are going to quickly bring you to the standard match here. This is the one in Game 3. It's the 4-color Marvel deck versus Grixis Improvise. So it's gonna be we have here Nathan Fox versus Robert Vaughan. They're in game 3. If Fox is the winner here, that's going to be the match now.
Yeah, 2 out of 3 will do it. I really like the Grixis improvised deck. It's playing a lot of cards that you wouldn't necessarily expect to see in a constructed deck.
I'll admit I might have to look some of these up. Herald of Anguish, Maverick Thopterist, Bastion Inventor.
Bastion Inventor is like the real surprising one. Those other 2 cards, Herald of Anguish is a card, he's got four copies in his main deck. A lot of people expected to see a lot of this card. It's really cool to see it actually seeing some play.
All right, let's go ahead and get to the match here. This is Fox versus Vaughan. It is on the top end of the table. These are your standard players. Right now, on the left, we have Robert Vaughan on 4-color Marvel. Got 5 lands in play, 12 energy set up. So a good situation, but Nathan, no slouch of his own here. Got Expedition Map, some Cogworkers Puzzle Knots.
Renegade Map, rather.
There you go, right, we're not playing Modern, are we? And we see Kozilek's Return is the cast here for Robert Vaughan. So it's going to clean up some of these servo tokens.
Get that gremlin off the battlefield, as Fox has previously released it.
We go back over to Fox's hand here. I think it's one of Key to the City. So he's got a key. So yeah, he'll play Implement of Combustion as a 5th artifact. So he's got Key to the City, Implement of Combustion, 2 Cogworkers Puzzle Knots, and now he will use the Renegade Map to find another land. So Ryan, this Grixis improvised deck's pretty neat. He's got a lot of these like servo schematic, Cogworkers Puzzle Knot. What are the payoffs here?
So the Herald of Anguish is kind of the big one that he's going for. Giant 5/5 flying demon. Maverick Thopterist is actually a pretty impressive card. It represents 3 bodies. You get a 2/2 and 2 1/1 flyers. And then the Bastion Inventor. That's the 4/4 hexproof.
Okay.
You just play these giant creatures, back them up with some counter spells, use your Key to the City to ship in for lethal with your giant creatures, assuming there's a blocker on the other side of the table. Use your Metallic Rebukes, which you can cast for just 1 blue mana, with these artifacts helping you pay for it. It's just a 1 mana leak.
Implement of Combustion, that's one that gives him some room against the Copycat combo. When we're looking over Nathan's hand, after cracking that map, he'll just pass right now, and we see Anticipate by Vaughan. He does have one of the hexproof cards in hand. It looks like he saved his mana so that he could use this Metallic Rebuke. He's actually going to counter Anticipate.
We're getting to the range where Vaughan could resolve an Aetherworks Marvel through a Metallic Rebuke. You see he has 6 lands on the battlefield. He could just play a 7 and then be able to pay the 3 mana. So I like countering the Anticipate there because there's no guarantee it will be able to actually counter a payoff spell.
Attune with the Aether cast by Vaughan. Now keep in mind here, Robert's got a full grip. He has 7 cards. That Metallic Rebuke was cast on a cantrip at that point, but you have to assume there's some sort of threat in the Vaughan's deck.
Yes. And post-sideboard, Fox does have access to 3 negates, which you can use to actually counter something like an Aetherworks Marvel. Vaughan's deck looks to be built to actually attempt to cast Ulamog in a significant number of his games. He's going to be buying time with his Fumigates, things like that, gaining enough life to go that late. And I imagine that's what his plan is for this game, is just getting to 10 lands and hard casting Ulamogs.
And you see both Patrick Sullivan and Jonathan Coveney have now moved over there to support their teammates in this match as they have finished. Vaughan will attempt an Aetherworks Marvel, but Fox is ready with another copy of Metallic Rebuke.
And Vaughan could have waited until his next turn and had access to 7 mana on tapping and played around that Rebuke.
Well, he's still not under any pressure though, right? That's where the advantage is for Robert Vaughan right now. Sure, he's getting all his spells countered, but Nathan's not winning.
No, he's really not doing too much, just hanging out with some artifacts that don't really amount to anything.
And when you look at the number of hard counters in Nathan Fox's deck, there actually aren't that many. There's those 3 negates you talked about, but that's about it. So eventually, if they just keep trading counter spells for haymakers, you got to think that Vaughan will win the fight. Mm-hmm. And now we see Nathan try to land a threat. It's going to be Bastion Inventor.
The mighty 4/4 hexproof. Vaughn's hanging out with the Harness Lightning in hand. It could kill a Herald of Anguish. Won't be able to deal with this one. Everyone's favorite mechanic, hexproof.
I'm a huge fan. It's great. If I'm going to play a really sweet card, I don't want you to mess with it.
It looks like Vaughan does have another Marvel at the ready, though, and likely to make something more significant than a 4-4 here. Now casting the Marvel with 3 mana up, and that one's going to resolve.
All right, and there's a lot of energy in reserve here. Robert going to spin the Aetherworks Marvel. Top 6 cards, gets to cast one for free. Harness Lightning, Tireless Tracker. Ulamog does hit. There's going to be the Eldrazi. It is the Ceaseless Hunger, and it's going to go to work eating Nathan's cards.
And he has previously cast Kozilek's Return, so if he wants to sweep up this Inventor, he can do that with that one.
Key to the City, Cogworkers Puzzle Knot. Look, Key to the City, he'll go for Spire of Industry and Key to the City and use this Kozilek's Return. So before Ulamog's arrival, the board will be swept for 5 damage. The hexproof is down. Now 2 cards are eaten away by Ulamog. And Ryan, once Ulamog's on the table, does Nathan have any way to move it?
It's gonna. It doesn't look like it. It looks like he's in trouble here. Not a lot of answers to Ulamog, really. Giant indestructible threats.
Absolutely. So he'll draw and try to get through this, but this should bring about the end of the game with no way to wipe it off the board and no real possibility to race it. It looks like all eyes are going to turn to the match between Chad Kastel and Corey Sarsfield.
Yep. Yeah, for the improvised deck, the plan is just to try to win the game or be ahead enough where you can chip in with your Key to the City before the Ulamog comes down.
Right, as soon as this fight went the way of Ulamog, it's just about going to be it. We'll see Vaughan clean it up. Still has 8 energy left for that Marvel. But 2 attacks should be good. Ulamog does exile 20 cards out of the library every time he attacks.
And Vaughan just showing off now.
Yeah, here's Linvala the Preserver. That was out of his sideboard. Nathan's going to try to do some stuff here. Implement of Combustion. Vaughan wanting to gain 5 life is the plan here, just in case. Ulamog gets 20 cards off the deck. Nathan's deck is somewhere in the zone between 20, more than 20, but less than 40 cards. So this first one will not mill his deck, but the second attack from Ulamog should exile the rest of the library.
Yeah, I count about 17, 18 cards that are just on the battlefield, however many cards in his hand on top of that. So this should be lethal or very close to it in terms of milling Fox here.
Yeah, there's the trigger.
Yeah, 3 cards in the holding as well. So this Ulamog should do it on the following turn.
Right, Nathan has 1 turn to win. I don't know how he would win from this board, though. Draws Maverick Thopterist. A card I really would love to see more play. It's not going to win him this game.
Yeah, really powerful card. Need to have that one earlier, though. And Fox going to weigh his options. You know, may as well cast a spell. There's some chance that Vaughan just doesn't attack with the Ulamog. I don't think that's what we're going to see happen here. Generates a board presence. Could make a block to save his life total, but again, nothing that can save his library. So the only card you could really have to deal with the Ulamog trigger is Disallow, which could actually counter that attack trigger. No copies in Fox's deck, however. And it would really be too little too late. As you see, Vaughan is on 17, and Fox really couldn't deal that much damage in any kind of reasonable pace. Yeah, and Vaughan going to spin into a Fumigate here. Ulamog's indestructible.
Sounds great. So Robert Vaughan takes game 3 over in Standard. 4-color Marvel is the winner, and now each team has won a match, which means the round will be decided over in Modern. That's going to be Chad Kastel versus Corey Sarsfield. So it's an Obzon mirror match, but it's anything but a mirror. For Chad Kastel, he's playing traditional Obzon. You know, you're kind of your white Jund, if you will. It's the all removal deck with cards like Lingering Souls and Paths to Exile. He does have an interesting build of it this weekend, playing cards like Voice of Resurgence in the deck, which you don't normally see.
Yeah.
But talking about Corey Sarsfield's list.
So this is a deck, if you saw Ross Merriam's article this week, he covered this deck. It recently 5-0'd a league on Magic Online, and this deck is just generating +1/+1 counters. It is the Arcbound Ravager deck that's not Affinity. Literally
right, I'm already in.
Winding Constrictor, Arcbound Ravager.
Okay, this is so cool. We're going to get you to the match, though, because these gentlemen are already underway.
Has Dark Confidant as well as some quote-unquote zero casting cost spells with Hangerback Walker and Walking Ballista, which also play very well with Hardened Scales, which you see on the battlefield right now.
Looks like, oh wow. Okay, so Corey Sarsfield's deck, I started looking at the battlefield, and I already see Hardened Scales and Winding Constrictor in play. Okay, I already love this deck.
Yes. This is in the phase of the game where I think that Kastel is kind of locked out.
Another Hardened Scales? Sure. Look at this. There's a Scavenging Ooze in play. So does this mean, Ryan, if he uses Scavenging Ooze, he'll get 4 1/1 counters every time he uses it? Yeah, that's why Kastel's picking up the cards.
Just 3. It doesn't double. It just adds 1.
Yeah, but there's Scales Constrictor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no. It's adding 1 for each of them, right?
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah, 1 green, exile card, gain life, put 4 1/1 counters on my Ooze.
Yeah, so Sarsfield's deck is lighter on interaction.
Cool.
So for Kastel, he really needed to get ahead in the early game. When we cut to the match, he was already behind on the board, and there's really not a lot he can do about that. He'd be relying on having something like a Damnation. There's only 1 in the sideboard.
So it's going to be a deciding game between these two teams to decide the round.
And so for Kastel, really in this game, he's looking to be disruptive and aggressive, just stop Sarsfield from setting up all these synergies. Kastel's deck just does not have anything like that.
Well, the different thing is that Kastel, I guess Sarsfield has a sticky threats, so to speak, right? There's cards like Arcbound Ravager, a Hangerback Walker. These are things where if your plan is to, say, use Liliana of the Veil, that's going to be kind of hard.
Yeah, it's going to be really relying on things like Path to Exile and targeted discards, say Inquisition and Kozilek, to really stop Sarsfield from ever getting off the ground.
All right, so we are going to be covering all weekend. This is round 1 of 9 here on day 1, but be sure to check back, of course, if there's rounds you missed today. We have all of our coverage on YouTube. So that's the Star City Games YouTube channel. We do have coverage of all of our events, including this weekend in Baltimore. But on top of that, you can find our Versus series, where top Star City pros play and showcase the different decks and different formats of Magic the Gathering. We have our new series, which is Split Second. We have Commander Versus videos, Magic Online playtesting, and a lot more. You can subscribe at youtube.com/Star City Games.
A lot of great coverage on there.
Players are very quickly getting ready for game 3. And I'm wondering, with Chad's, he's going to start with Inquisition of Kozilek. Okay, so do you want to take the creatures or the cogs? You see here there's some lands. There's Fatal Push, Dark Confidant, Walking Ballista, Traverse the Ulfin Vault, and 2 Dark Confidants. I guess, like, do you fight over the threats? Like, or do you fight over the cards like Hardened Scales?
It really depends what the content of Kastel's hand is. If he has something like his own Fatal Push, he can deal with Dark Confidant really cleanly.
Well, Kastel won't give him the choice if Sarsfield just draws the Hardened Scales, which he does that turn and casts it. A land and go for Kastel, no threat. You see Corey is playing in the interest of saving time, rather than having Kastel write down his hand, Corey is just playing it face up.
Love it.
You see the face down card, he's not going to show that one because Kastel didn't know that when he cast Inquisition.
Yep.
And he'll cast it. It's another Hardened Scales, choosing to play that over Dark Confidant. And then he'll cast Traverse the Ulfin Vault, making so that he gets his 3rd land drop. But this is so scary already with 2 of this card.
Yes. Could make this Ballista come down with a lot of counters on it.
Yeah, it means, and there's no responding, right? If he taps 2 mana, it just is a 3/3.
Yep.
Scavenging Ooze, just, oh, this deck's cool.
Yeah, this is a sweet one. I like this deck a lot.
So fortunately, I think for Chad, his removal is not very damage based. You know, Path to Exile doesn't care how big your creature is.
Right.
Fatal Push doesn't care.
If it were a Hangerback Walker instead of a Walking Ballista, that would force Kastel to have Path to Exile instead of Fatal Push. So there is some reprieve there.
Well, Chad doesn't have to get something on the board, though. These Hardened Scales, I mean, we're 1 Arcbound Ravager from things being really difficult for Chad.
That one's scary.
Well, because you'd play it for 2 mana, it would come down as a 3/3, and when you sacrificed, it would modular 5 counters.
Not bad.
Because it adds 2 every time you move those counters around.
This deck's sweet.
All right, we'll see what Chad can do here. Maybe something like Lingering Souls to get a threat going. Not that it'll be Liliana of the Veil. Looks like he's going to go for the attrition game plan here. If he can force Corey to, discard his cards and then kill everything that Corey casts, he can run him out of cards. And if he does that, it won't matter that there's 2 Hardened Scales sitting around. Now there is the issue though. He's going to plus Liliana. That gets it out of range of Walking Ballista so far. And now Corey will pick up his hand. Chad's going to write down the remaining cards. 5 minutes remaining in the round. That clock is correct for the players here. Looks like Fatal Push and Damnation are the cards that are gone.
Now if Kastel has something like Tarmogoyf for a Scavenging Ooze, he knows there's no removal spell hanging out. Just has to be concerned about that Walking Ballista.
Turn 3 for Sarsfield. Does he want Dark Confidant? His land is Dark Confidant, Walking Ballista, and lands. He'll play Walking Ballista. It gets 3 1/1 counters. That's not enough to take care of Liliana just yet.
It would be if Kastel went for a -2 to Edict, but if he just has some removal spell otherwise, he'll be sticking around on at least 1.
So the best play here then is to try to kill the Ballista and then plus the Liliana again. And then he can keep that Planeswalker around as he grinds through these cards.
If he had something like Fatal Push Tarmogoyf, this would be a very good turn.
That'd be brutal. Okay, Fatal Push. I think he has exactly what you mentioned, Ryan. On response, Corey's going to 3 to the Liliana. She goes to 1, but she still stays in play. And yeah, how about Tarmogoyf? Obzon doing Obzon things. Here's Tarmogoyf. Chad will plus again.
So this is where having that artifact is going to hurt Sarsfield a little bit, as that Tarmogoyf is going to check that card type in the graveyard.
Well, it's where having cards like Hardened Scales hurts him, right? He's now out of cards. He can cast Dark Confidant, but these 2 Hardened Scales, they're cards that Chad doesn't have to answer. So it's kind of like Corey discarded cards.
Yeah, if Kastel is able to stop Sarsfield from getting his synergies going, a lot of these synergistic cards that just aren't very good on their own, they feel like mulligans.
Liliana -2 takes care of Sarsfield's last card. Chad attacks for 5, plays Tireless Tracker, says go. With Sarsfield at 10, we are on a 1 or maybe 2 turn clock. It looks 1 if Chad can draw land. But here is Hangerback Walker from Sarsfield. It's a 4/4.
Kastel really wants a Path to Exile for that one.
That would do it. They go stop there. Corey did have to use a fetch land to cast that, so they'll back up and make sure he does that. It's a basic, so he's only at 9.
Puts him down to 8, actually.
Okay. Yeah, Tarmogoyf was a 6/7, correct. Yeah, he's down to 8. And keep in mind, every time if Corey gets to tap this Hangerback Walker even once to grow it, it'll grow to a 7/7 and be able to eat Tarmogoyf.
Yes.
Because Hardened Scales is that awesome.
Corey's going to need to make a block on this turn, though, as Kastel does have a combination of lethal attackers. Well, the Tarmogoyf's actually a 6/7.
Okay, so it's just the 6 and the 3. You're absolutely right. And before that, he's going to play and sacrifice a fetch land to get 2 clues into play off Tireless Tracker. That's pretty good.
Kastel even has the ability to crack one of these clues to look for a Path to Exile to try to make this lethal this turn.
That's exactly what he's going to do. Gets a 1/1 counter on the tracker. Can he draw the removal spell? Make it easy. No. So he'll just swing Tarmogoyf. He is not going to offer up that Tireless Tracker.
Yeah, Tireless Tracker being able to generate more card advantage is certainly worth keeping around. Just trading for the Hangerback Walker, which replaces itself 4 times over, not a great scene.
Now, Ryan, Corey went to 2 there. That means if he doesn't draw a blocker, he's dead.
Yeah.
And he didn't. He drew a fetch land. All Chad has to do is turn these cards sideways. Converts another clue, yeah. He should. A minute remains, but the team of Vaughan, Kastel, and Sullivan should be able to walk this in.
Yeah, looks like they got this rolled up from here.
Despite Patrick Sullivan's best efforts.
Make sure the coast is clear.
Yeah, coast is clear. Turn him sideways, and that is going to be the round. Chad Kastel brings it home, and Vaughan, Kastel, and Sullivan will win the round.
See some energy from Sullivan there.
Absolute gas. Handshakes there. And our team event here in Baltimore starts out going right down to the wire. bringing all 3 matches going to 3 games, but it is the modern match and Abzan bringing it home.